You know, perched on a hill in Syria, there's a fortress so strong, so brilliantly designed that many have called it the perfect castle. For almost 1,000 years, it stood against everything. Earthquakes, sieges, the simple passage of time. This is the incredible story of Krak de Chevaliers.
Now, when Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia, a man who knew the Middle East like the back of his hand, when he saw this castle, he was just blown away. I mean, that quote says it all, doesn't it? But what really makes this fortress so special? What did it do to earn the title of the world's most admirable castle?
Well, to understand its genius, we've got to rewind the clock. Because long before it was famous as a Crusader stronghold, it actually had a totally different name and a totally different purpose.
Okay, so let's track its transformation. It all starts way back in 1031 as a Kurdish fort. But then, as the Crusades heat up, things get messy. And then comes the real turning point, 1142. That's the year the castle is handed over to the Knights Hospitaller. And let me tell you, these guys would turn it into the absolute legend we know today.
Look at these maps, because they show you exactly why this spot was a game changer. It's all about location, location, location. The castle sits right on top of the Homs Gap, the only real path through the mountains. So if you're trying to move an army, or even just trade goods between the coast and major cities inland, you had no choice. You had to go right past this castle. Whoever controlled this fortress controlled the entire region. Simple as that.
So, who exactly were these Knights Hospitaller? Well, funny enough, they didn't start out as soldiers at all. They actually began by running a hospital in Jerusalem, taking care of sick pilgrims. But the reality of the Crusader states was brutal, and they had to adapt. They became this elite fighting force of warrior monks, defending land and people with incredible skill. And Krak de Chevaliers, well, that was going to be their masterpiece.
Right. So, with the Hospitallers now in charge, the castle enters what you could call its golden age. They took a pretty basic fort and started transforming it into an absolute marvel of military engineering.
So, what was their big idea? How do you make a castle basically unbeatable? Their answer was as simple as it was revolutionary. You build a castle, and then you build another, even tougher castle right inside it. It's a concept that would literally redefine how fortresses were built.
And this is it, the concentric castle. It was just pure military genius. So, imagine you're an attacker. You finally managed to break through that massive outer wall. You think you've made it, right? Wrong. Now you're trapped in this narrow open space, a killing ground, with archers firing down at you from a second, even taller and thicker inner wall. It was a fortress designed to just bleed an attacking army dry.
And the force inside was massive. We're talking 2,000 soldiers at its peak. From this rock-solid base, the Hospitallers weren't just playing defense. Oh no. They were projecting power, raiding deep into enemy lands, and forcing local towns to pay them for protection.
Its reputation was huge, spreading all across Europe. When the King of Hungary stopped by for a visit in 1218, he was so impressed he called it the key of the Christian lands, and even offered to help pay for its upkeep. This thing wasn't just a castle. It was a powerful symbol.
But, no matter how strong the walls are, nothing lasts forever. By the end of the 13th century, the political map was changing, and a powerful new enemy was on the rise, one who was determined to push the Crusaders out for good.
So in 1271, the legendary Mamluk Sultan, Baybars, shows up with his army. And for 36 straight days, he just pummels the fortress with his siege engines. But the castle held. The design worked exactly as the Hospitallers had planned.
Okay, let's walk through how this all went down. Baybars' army is bombarding the walls. His engineers finally manage to dig under a tower and bring it crashing down. The attackers pour through the gap. But it's just like a drill for the defenders. They fall back to the inner fortress, ready to hold out for months. And then, something totally unexpected happens. A messenger arrives with a letter.
The letter looked official. It was supposedly from the Knights' own Grand Master, ordering them to surrender the castle. The garrison, totally cut off from the outside world, believed it was a real order. So, they laid down their weapons. Just think about that. The world's most perfect castle, a fortress that brute force couldn't crack, was taken by a trick. A simple piece of paper. And, to his credit, Sultan Baybars, having won with his mind, spared all their lives.
So the fall of the castle in 1271 was a huge deal, the end of an era.
But it was nowhere near the end of the castle's story. In fact, its next chapter would see it fade away before being reborn as a global icon.
After the siege, the Mamluks actually repaired the castle and put it back to use, even converting the chapel into a mosque. For hundreds of years, it was kind of forgotten by the West. Then, in the 19th century, European explorers stumbled upon it and were just shocked at how well preserved it was. That rediscovery led to a massive restoration project in the 1930s, and eventually, in 2006, it was officially named a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And that brings us to its most recent and really its most tragic chapter. A castle that stood for centuries as the ultimate symbol of strength became a victim of modern war. This picture from the Syrian Civil War is it's a gut punch. It shows how even the strongest walls are so fragile. It survived the Crusades only to be shelled in our own time.
So what is the legacy of Krak de Chevaliers today? Well, it's so much more than just old stones. It is without a doubt one of the most important medieval castles left on Earth, a masterclass in military design. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it's a monument to resilience, a treasure that really belongs to all of us.
And that kind of leaves us with a tough question, doesn't it? Here's this amazing structure, born from conflict, a perfect machine of war. But today, we see it as this priceless piece of our shared human history. So how do we protect these incredible legacies, forged in the violence of the past, from being destroyed by the conflicts of today?